Hey everybody, Pastor Greg here. I'm excited about life and I hope that you are too, because I know that life is good and getting better all the time. If you have a prayer request, if there's a desire, if there's a need in your life, if there's a challenge in your life, we are here and our prayer champions are here to know the truth on your behalf. It's very easy to do. All you have to do is send an email to prayerchampions@celebrationsc.org and we will know the truth and stand with you. For those of you who have sent us a prayer request, as we continue to pray for you, we want to hear from you. Let us know your victory. Let us know your miracle. Send us your love story. We would love to hear from you. We are in the final week of our message series, Life After Life. Let's get into today's message. Yes. Feels so good. It feels so good. Feels so good. Feels so good to know the truth, to hear the truth, to remember the truth, and to allow the truth to be our truth. Yes. Well, good morning, Celebration Spiritual Center. How are we feeling? Wonderful. Well, it's so good to be here yet again with each and every one of you. We're going to get right into today's message, and as I always like to do, I like to talk about where we've been over the last few weeks. This is the fourth week, the final week of our series, Life After Life. And in week one, my topic was pastime paradise. And we looked at how we can use past lives to our benefit, because the phenomena of understanding and tapping back into our past lives is the thing that can prove to us that we're eternal beings. It's incredibly beneficial. But I also talked about the power of our divine memory and how many times we use that same idea of our past lives to beat ourselves up and to have ourselves stuck in, oh, well, I did this in the past life, and so I'm suffering for it now. But the only thing that matters is now. And so we can use the memory of those powerful moments in our past life to remember how powerful we are, how eternal we are, and use that to create even more power and more magnificence in this life. But if there's something in the past life that you don't like, let it go. Leave it there, because it's not now. In week two, we came from the topic, don't wait until you die. Recognizing that we have all of these powerful truths that have come through so many people who have had near-death experiences, and they come back with these teachings, these understandings that although sometimes their experiences are a little different, they come back with these common universal truths. And the truth is that we don't have to wait until we die in order to understand these truths and, more importantly, to live from these truths. So don't wait until you die. And then last week, as we took these ideas, understanding what happens when we transition, when we move from this life to the next life, I told you that I have a message from the ancestors. And we looked at this idea of a life review, that when we move from one room of life to the next room of life, there's a moment where we review what took place before. And I invited you to hear the words of your ancestors through me, asking for forgiveness, recognizing that if they knew better, they really would have done better. But the moment of their transition, the moment of their change, they see it all clearly. And so we use the prayer, the Ho'oponopono prayer. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. If you haven't heard any of those messages, feel free to go back to YouTube and watch those messages at your leisure. So as we were talking last week about this idea of our ancestors, powerful transition happened this week, yes? And now we can say that Prince Rogers Nelson is our ancestor. All of that power, all of that force, all of that creativity is now in the non-physical, even more powerful, even more creative than it was here on earth. And it is our ancestor. We have access. It is operating on our behalf. I talked about that last week. All of our ancestors want to operate in, through, and as our life on our behalf, but we have to allow that. And now we have a very new and powerful ancestor. Prince Rogers Nelson is our ancestor, operating in the non-physical on our behalf. That's powerful. That's powerful. And one of the things that I saw throughout the days, it hasn't even been a week yet, a lot of people keep using the word loss. This was such a profound loss. We lost something. We lost. But every time I heard that, I affirmed within myself, there is no loss in the mind of God. There is no loss. And when we understand this powerful truth about our ancestors, what we actually begin to understand and come to know to be true is that there is no loss, there was only gain. Look at all that we gained through the transition of our brother. Look at all that we've gained. And it's interesting because we say, and you know, we're so accustomed to using these words. I know why people say loss. I'm not, you know, criticizing anyone for using that word. I know why, because we've come so used to using those types of words, and we think of it as a loss. But what's interesting is his body is gone. His body was cremated, right? But doesn't he feel more alive than ever before? There's no place you can go right now where his music isn't. He's so alive in our memory right now. He's actually probably larger than life right now than ever before. We understand that there really is no loss, right? And then we can take it even further, and we understand that they're saying now, you know, the vault, there's enough music to put out for 100 years. Where's the loss? And in truth, there is no loss in the mind of God. One of the first thoughts that came to me after I got the news, one of my oldest friends, we've been friends since we were 5 years old, and one of the many things we shared together is our love of Prince and his music, and he texted me, and I was frozen. I was frozen for a minute, and I had to collect myself. And the first thought that came to me, as I talk about this idea of Prince now being our ancestor, it took me to something from a book that I love. I talk about it all the time, Think and Grow Rich. And it took me to this writing where Napoleon Hill talks about this invisible counsel. And he writes this: long before I had ever written a line for publication or endeavored to deliver a speech in public, I followed the habit of reshaping my own character by trying to imitate the mind of men whose lives and life works had been most impressive to me. These 9 men were Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, and Carnegie. Every night over a long period of years, I held an imaginary council meeting with this group who I called my invisible counselors. The procedure was this: just before going to sleep at night, I would shut my eyes and see in my imagination this group of men seated with me around my council table. Here I had not only an opportunity to sit among those whom I considered to be great, but I actually dominated the group by serving as the chairman. And so we have this awesome opportunity now that all that we have heralded Prince to be here on this earth, he's now a part of our invisible council. And so if there's a moment of creativity that you desire in your life, if there's something that you want to create and you honor and respect the way that he created and lived fearlessly on the earth, talk to the brother. Call him forth. Call that energy forth. Because that energy that flowed through him is the same energy, is the same life, is the same God that flows in, through, and as you. Yes. Now, before we move too deep into the message, I just want to bring our minds back to the synopsis for this month. I want to reread this so that we understand what we're talking about. A Course in Miracles says this: no one who follows the ego's teaching is without the fear of death. Behind all fear, there is the fear of death. This fear may be the biggest barrier we have created to block our unlimited potential and possibility. It is the ultimate illusion. What if there was a way to overcome this fear? What if we can learn to see it differently? Today, we have many varied accounts of what happens when we die. Anita Moorjani, Dr. Eben Alexander, and Jill Bolte Taylor are just 3 recent and popular examples that give us a glimpse into life after life. The differing details of their stories and others reflect the diversity of every life experience, and yet we find common themes that guide us in releasing the fear of death. Death is not an ending, it is a new beginning. This month, we will examine truths from life after life and replace the fear of death with the joy of living. Please look at someone and just say, death is a new beginning. And so as we have taken this journey, pastime paradise, don't wait until you die, a message from the ancestors, It's now time for a new beginning. To whom much is given, much is required. You're now responsible for the word that has been deposited in, through, and as you. You're now responsible for this month-long experience that we've co-created together. You now know something about life after life, and you're now responsible to live according to that knowing. It's a new beginning. And so as I pondered that and thought about this idea of a new beginning, we have to share the story of our sister, Anita Moorjani. And I think that out of her life and out of her story, her powerful story, we walk away with 5 ways to now live in this new beginning. Now, for those that don't know the story, Anita Moorjani, she has a book that chronicles what took place in her life called Dying to Be Me. I encourage you to purchase it if you don't have it. But in 2002, she was diagnosed with cancer. And she had witnessed several relatives deal with cancer and watched how, the dominant treatments really kind of just ravaged their bodies. And she said, I don't want to go through that experience. So she sought alternative modes of healing, right? But they didn't seem to work out. And so she had to go the traditional route. And 4 years later, in 2006, her cancer had spread and become terrible. So terrible that she had tumors all over her body from her neck down to her abdomen, the size of lemons. And her body, her organs, everything in her body began to fail. She was ultimately rushed to the hospital and was in a coma for 3 days. And as she's in this coma, of course, what happens in this moment is, her family was contacted. It was time for everybody to come and gather because her organs are failing and the doctors were clear that she does not have long, right? And while she's in this coma and while she is dying, she has a profound experience. We've talked about Jill Bolte Taylor's experience. We've talked about Dr. Eben Alexander's experience. Well, Anita Moorjani had a similar experience. She moved on to the non-physical and experienced, one, she saw her best friend who had transitioned. She interacted with her father who had transitioned. But more than that, she had an out-of-body experience. She recognized this idea that she was one with all. Jill Bolte Taylor talked about the same thing. As I shared, as we recognize that we are actually one with all, the thing that makes us different on this physical earth, we are 99.99% alike. And there's that small 1/100th of a percentage that makes us different, that makes up our different skin colors and our height and our hair textures. That's all it is, that 1%. And as Jill Bolte Taylor says, which I love, that's what we're fighting over, the wars and all of the separation. 1/100th of a percent is what it is. We are 99.99% alike. Anita Moorjani experienced that. She experienced that sense of profound oneness with all. And she was told by her best friend in that moment that it wasn't her time, that she was going to have to go back. And you can imagine looking back on that body that was being ravaged by cancer, tumors all over her body the size of lemons. Who would want to return back to that physical apparatus? But see, our sister Anita Moorjani knew something different about life now. She recognized now the way she had not loved herself when she was in that physical body and how that lack of self-love manifested over many years as these tumors, literally killing herself. Do you see that? And so she recognized that then she could bring a new awareness about who and what she is when she goes back into that body and shift her experience. And so again, as I said, she was in a coma for 3 days. 3 days pass and she wakes up out of that coma. And according to the account, within 4 days, all of those tumors had shrunk by 70%. In 5 weeks, she was completely healed of cancer and was released from the hospital. Now, I love the power of the story of Anita Moorjani because it's a 2-for-1. Not only do we get this powerful near-death experience, not only do we get this confirmation about when we transition into the next life, we will be met with love and only love, that there's no judgment, that there's no hellfire, that there's not some angel that's going to keep us out of the afterworld, right? We get that, and that's wonderful, and that's good, and we've been talking about that. But then there's a recognition of our ability to heal ourselves. There's a recognition that every illness, every dis-ease, every discomfort that we may experience in our physical body is a conversation. It's a conversation. Doesn't happen overnight. You don't have to not love yourself today and be scared that cancer is going to manifest. That's not what it is. But can you recognize that as this body that we are, the trillions of cells that make up our body, they listen to us. They respond to us. And over time, as we deposit lack of love into those cells, as we continue to tell those cells that they're not worthy, as we continue to tell those cells that they're limited, as we continue to tell those cells that they deserve a certain type of treatment, eventually they have to conform with you because you are the king and the queen of your life. And so as we come out of this moment with Anita Moorjani, she shares with us 5 things that we can all take away from this moment and begin to live from it. And as I was sitting with these 5 things, I recognized that as we talk about our brother Prince, he embodied these 5 things. Now, what is the first thing that Anita Moorjani says? She says the most important thing we have to focus on is love. But more importantly, not just this syrupy, sweet love, oh, I love you all, and I love humanity, and I'm just a person that just loves. Meanwhile, when's the last time you said I love you to yourself? See, so often in our lives, we get on this sentimental high horse, spiritual horse of being loving, but yet we have never loved ourselves. And so we're giving the world everything that we actually need. Self-love, number 1. We say here so often we don't believe in struggle, and sacrifice is a 4-letter word. Sacrifice is the opposite of love. The universe, God, source, use whatever name you want. It is not requiring sacrifice. It doesn't require that. It's a 4-letter word. Because think about it. How many of us have sacrificed in our lives? I'm raising my hand high. Okay? Everybody has sacrificed in our lives. How'd that turn out? Right? It feels noble. Right? Loving sacrifice feels noble, it feels spiritual, it feels nice, but somewhere along the line, now maybe it doesn't happen immediately, sometimes it takes years, just like it took years for this cancer to manifest in her body. It takes years, but then you feel depleted. Then you feel unappreciated because you were sacrificing. The person didn't know you were sacrificing. I love this. Iyanla Vanzant says this so often, and I love the way she puts it. She says that we don't sacrifice because what happens is that person that you're sacrificing for, you've made them a thief and they don't know it. That's why we feel unappreciated. We're doing things that nobody asked us to do, but we're in this place of, oh, I'm loving and I'm sacrificing because that's what love is. That's not what love is. Love doesn't sacrifice. Right? As I always say, an empty cup feeds none. So you got to love yourself first. You got to fill your cup up. That's the only way then you can love the world. How do we fill our cup up? By loving ourselves. And it can start so simply. In your morning meditation, as you're grateful for everything, be grateful for yourself. Be grateful for your body. Be grateful for your feet, for your toes, for your hands, for your ears, for your eyes. Look at yourself in the mirror when you're brushing your teeth and say, hey, you beautiful thing. I was sharing the story with Pastor Yolanda, and Prince talked about it in one of the concerts that I went to. The song Cream, go back and listen to it, right? Although it's filled with sexual innuendo, what he was doing in that song was speaking to himself. He said, I was looking in the mirror when I wrote that song. And he was reminding himself that you are going to be success. You're a hit. Ain't nobody better than you. He spoke the words of truth to himself through song. Prince understood self-love. Now, Anita Moorjani, in the second lesson she says that she learned that we all must embrace is to live fearlessly. Now, y'all know Prince lived fearlessly, right? How courageous was it to change your name and have everybody call you crazy and not understand what you were doing, to take a stand against the record company, his record company, Warner Brothers at the time. People didn't get it. This was before MP3s changed the music industry. This was before digital music changed the record industry, right? We have a different understanding now about music and the business of music than we did back then. He understood something more powerful. He was willing to live fearlessly. He was willing to even compromise his audience as he moved into the Purple Rain period. The audience that was with him during the controversy, Dirty Mind period, they weren't sure if they wanted to stay with him during the Purple Rain period. He was fearless enough to change his music. He believed that my audience will hang with me. I can do any genre. Doesn't matter, right? Fearlessly. Now, I love something that Anita Moorjani says here when she says to live your life fearlessly. And as we've already talked about this first idea of love, she says love keeps you safer than fear. See, we've been taught this illusion. We've been taught this lie about fear, right? That fear keeps us safe, that there's such thing as healthy fear, right? Yes, danger, there are things that are dangerous that we must be mindful of, but fear is an illusion because fear is all in our mind. There are many things that each and every one of us are afraid of that other people aren't. What's the difference between the experience except the thought? Love keeps you much safer than fear. The third lesson, this is an easy one. Humor, laughter, and joy. Do all that you can to keep that in your life. Especially when, and this is interesting, especially when you're having a difficult time in life, especially when you're experiencing something within your body that's challenging, especially when life just seems a little difficult, run to wherever you can find humor, laughter, and joy. Whatever that is for you, whatever that looks like for you. Because as you do that, what are you doing? Well, the vibration of humor, the vibration of laughter, the vibration of joy is actually the vibration of the change, of the shift, of the thing that you want to be, to do, or have. So in order to call that thing into being as the universe is responding to you, you got to be in humor. You got to be in laughter. You must be in joy if you want that thing to come forward. So as Abraham always loves to say, yes, as we're living life and things are happening that we don't like, that's a gift. It's wonderful. Because we get clear about what we want when we're experiencing what we don't want. Yes, if you go out on a date and it doesn't feel good, you don't like the experience, do you get real clear about what it is that you want the next time? When you look at your bank account and you don't like the number that you see, you get clear about the number that you want to see. Yes. If you're walking through the world and there's a pain in your body and it's just not feeling good, you're clear about the desire to feel better in your body. Yes. And what's beautiful is as soon as that thought comes, the process has already begun. The tendency of the universe is towards love. The tendency of the universe is towards that thing that you want. And so the only reason that the unwanted thing shows up is to point us back to the wanted. And again, this vibration of humor, this vibration of laughter, this vibration of joy will put us in that place. Number 4, she says that life is a gift. I believe we sang this, it was this month, we sang the song, All of Life is a Movement Toward Our Wholeness. And that's what that verse from the Tao Te Ching is really all about. In the Tao Te Ching, it says all of life is a movement toward our perfection. And the root of that word is wholeness. That everything that happens in our life, it really is a gift, as I just said. Why? Because it points us back to the wanted thing. It really is a gift because it's just tapping us on our shoulder to reminding us that we forgot this truth about who and what we are. That we began to live a life of lack of love. That we began to beat ourselves up. That we began to sacrifice. We began to do things that are counter to the truth of who and what we are. And life is so perfect and so loving and so beautiful that it's going to remind us that you're greater. that you're eternal, that you're powerful, that you're worthy, do not continue to go down that path of unworthiness. Do not continue to go down that path of lack of love. And so these situations are showing up just to get our attention. And the beautiful thing, as you begin to live this path and walk this path, I admonish you to lower your threshold for pain. Yes. And what do I mean by that? What do I mean by that? See, we call this thing life the still small voice. It can tap you on the shoulder, and you could just have maybe a small, slight little encounter with somebody on the subway, but it wasn't ugly. You didn't get angry. And that can be a situation that shows, oh, wait, what's really going on? Like, why did I even encounter that? Because, I believe that we're all brothers and sisters, and life is love, and I'm loving myself. And so, wait, I had that experience. Let me check back in, Oh, right, I was beating myself up last night because I didn't do something that I thought I was supposed to do. Oh, okay, I see. That was that energy just manifesting. Let me go back, right? Still small voice. But because we have such a high threshold for pain in our lives, we got to get knocked upside the head, literally and figuratively, right, by life before we pay attention. That's the only reason why these dis-eases or these discomforts in our body show up, right? Our bodies are perfect. We don't have to experience all of the hurts and aches and pains that we do. But it's, again, as it's simply trying to get our attention, as we have these awful breakups, as we have, just these magnificent experiences of our 10th layoff. Well, layoff number 1, the universe was trying to tap you into something about your worthiness, about your purpose, about living in joy, right? You just kept taking a job that didn't feel good. And just kept taking a job that didn't feel good. And kept taking a job, so right, you had to get laid off for you to finally stop and look at what was going on. I love what Marianne Williamson says in Return to Love, that yes, these situations happen, and that's what forces us to get on our knees. Then we get back to our spiritual practice, we get back to what we know to be true. But she says, why not just stay in the realm of the answer? Why not just live your life in that place where you never actually have to get on your knees when life gets bad, get on your knees when life gets difficult, but just live in that space and place in that vibration. And it doesn't take much. 15 minutes every morning, that's it. Of just remembering what is true. Of sitting in stillness. Allowing the spirit that is you to speak to you, to remind you in that time to be grateful for all things. I was sharing with Pastor Yolanda this week, I was doing this Louise Hay meditation, and it's like 20 minutes, but I love Louise Hay because she just takes you through it. You start, be grateful for your bed. The bed was so comfortable, and it just wrapped you along, and and then think about your kitchen and your refrigerator, and it keeps your food so fresh, and I'm just having this moment like, Louise, hey, you bad, this is good. And then she takes us, she was like, and think about all the transportation and the ways we can move around. Roller skates. We have but you can spend this time of being in joy thinking about all the ways, all the things that we have to be grateful for, right? She takes you through this whole process. It's just awesome, right? But just doing that, it shifts you. Even as we're here in joy now, just laughing and smiling about it, right? That's the vibration that then goes out before you and sweeps everything clear. Yes. And so then what happens, you never even have that altercation. Nobody's going to step on your foot on the subway, right? When you walk, I think I've shared this story, before you go into the office, things are just, the path is swept clear, so you don't have to worry about. The story I shared was somebody that used to, as soon as I walked in the office, they would just pounce on me with information and problems. And I recognized that as it was annoying me, I started to each day say, Lord, I hope he ain't bothering me as soon as I come in, which of course I was creating that every time. Once I came to myself and remembered the power that I possess, I began to affirm that all will be well, that I'll be able to come in. I like to come in and sit and chill and, have my breakfast and kind of just, right, before I move into the day. Once I affirmed that without ever saying a word, everything changed, right? And so that's what begins to happen as we do that. And what is the final lesson from our sister, Anita Moorjani? She says to be yourself. She says, be as you can be. That sounds like Dr. Seuss. Be as you can be. Shine your light as brightly as you can. Now, I don't know about you, but I can remember many times in my life where I dialed my light back, thinking, oh, well, I don't want to outshine this person. You know, maybe it might be a little too much. Let me just kind of hold back. The outcome of that for me was I would be annoyed. I would be mad at the way they were doing stuff. Right? And I would feel unappreciated and unrecognized. Right? Be as you can be. Live authentically. There's so many thoughts and so many lessons that we can take from the transition of our brother, Prince Rogers Nelson. He lived fearlessly, y'all. And he chose to be himself. He chose to be as him could be. Right? So can you take that lesson from your brother today? The earth has changed, I believe, as this transition has happened. We've all changed, and we have this awesome opportunity now to be ourselves even more than ever before, because he has stood here on the earth and proven that it all works out in the end. He stood and proved that you'll actually be loved and heralded, that no, people may not understand it when you're being yourself fully, but it all comes full circle. And it only requires your courage. It only requires your willingness. It only requires your self-love to be the person that you know God designed you to be. Yes, we talk about this unity, the 99.99%, and yet there is that small percentage that makes us unique. Celebrate that. And not in separation. Sometimes we get into this place of uniqueness, and so we cut ourselves off. I'm the black sheep of my family. Nobody's like me. Well, yeah, well, I'm into all this spiritual stuff, and they're not. And, oh, well, I'm doing this, and they don't understand. You don't have to separate yourself. But just honor who you are. And as you give yourself permission, that permission, you give them the permission as well. Yes, yes. That's what Marianne Williamson was talking about in Return to Love. As you shine your light, what do? You give others permission to do the same. Abraham Hicks talks about it within the law of allowing, that it's the third portion that we have to understand if we want to really embrace the law of attraction in its totality. That I recognize that as I am the creator of my life experience, that I am flowing energy that is, we call God, source, the universe, flowing it through me to manifest and create and realize the life that I want. Each and every one of us have the same individualized possibility and power. And so I accept, I honor, I salute, I say namaste to the God in you, right? Recognizing and allowing that same uniqueness that you are. I honor and celebrate your uniqueness. I honor and celebrate your possibility and your power and your courage to live your authentic life and to be your authentic self. As I do that, I'm celebrating myself. And so in this moment, as we understand that it's a new beginning, that we have information that maybe we didn't have before. Maybe we didn't really know that we're eternal. Maybe we really didn't know that we are loved unconditionally forever. Maybe we really didn't know that in truth there are no mistakes. Because Scripture teaches us that love holds no record of wrongs and God is love. Scripture says that his mercy endureth forever. Mercy, that word is a bad translation. The word is really loving kindness. God's loving kindness, love's loving kindness endures forever. That's the truth of life. That's why we can say that in truth there are no mistakes. When we made the mistake, we weren't in our right mind. We believed that we were something other than what God created us as. And so in this moment, I invite everybody to stand. Lesson 97 of A Course in Miracles says, I am spirit. And then there's an affirmation in that lesson that I want to adapt today, because I think it's so powerful, and it's a powerful way to move on from life after life. Because I believe even as we have gone through this process, we've stepped into a new reality. We've stepped into a new life. We've stepped into a new beginning. No longer can we accept this idea of our finality. No longer can we accept even this idea of loss, because there is no loss in the mind of God. And so I invite you to affirm these words with me. Spirit, I am.
Spirit, I am.
A holy child of God.
A holy child of God.
Free of all limits.
Free of all limits.
Safe.
Safe.
Healed.
Healed.
And whole.
And whole.
Free to forgive.
Free to forgive.
Free to love.
Free to love.
And free to save the world.
And free to save.
We're going to say it again. Spirit, I am.
Spirit, I am.
A holy child of God.
A holy child of God.
Free of all limits.
Free of all limits.
Safe.
Safe.
Healed.
Healed.
And whole.
And whole.
Free to forgive.
Free to forgive.
Free to love.
Free to love.
And free to save the world.
And free to save the world.
And together we say amen.
Amen.
Ashe.
Ashe.
And so it is.
And so it is.
Thank you, God. Thank you, God.